I'm really glad to see everyone here tonight. We've been talking in this group as we've had presentations over the last year or two about how important to our little neck of the woods Lake Wheeler Road is. I know you guys have heard Bob talk about it. Some of you have heard me talk about it. Many of the people on this call who are community members are invested in getting things along Lake Wheeler coordinated and right, whatever that may mean. So what we wanted to do as a community group was just invite all the players into the room and have a kind of roundtable conversation. So we're gonna move pretty quickly through things tonight. There's a lot happening in this neck of the woods, which is really great. And we wanted to create an atmosphere of kind of collaborative thought between city folks, hopefully some folks from the State Farmers Market, community members, and some of the private developers that are working on projects along this street. So in the spirit that we usually have in Southwest, we want this to be collaborative and productive for everyone on the phone, ideas and discussion. However, we do want to move quickly through a lot of projects so that everyone has a familiar playing field. So what I'm going to ask is that as we go through presentations tonight, first from city folks and then from folks who are more private development, that we have questions and comments in the chat. And then when we get through everyone, hopefully a little, but definitely by 8 o'clock, we'll be doing some discussion and having Q&A and collaborative thought then. So I'm hoping that everyone is ready. I'm going to drop an agenda in the chat. I did have one request just to switch our Dix Park and Dix Edge presentations at the front. So I think we're going to start off with Matthew Klim from Raleigh Planning. I'll let you take it over. You've got 5 minutes to talk about Dix Edge. I think you can do it though, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Jen. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I need, I guess it says the host needs to enable that for me. So I don't know if that's you or.
I think you should be good now if you try.
Okay, here we go. All right. So thanks for having us, Jen. We got a broad team of folks from the city here. And so as we go through the different pieces of the agenda, we'll hand it off to those staff members. But I'm joined tonight by Kate Pierce with the Dix Park planning team, Fontaine Burris, who is in transportation planning, Brian Rothy, who is the project manager for the Lake Wheeler Road design and construction project, the Streetscape plan, and also Grady. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Sorry, Grady. Grady McCullum. I wanted to get that right on the Carolina Pines Avenue project. So I'm going to talk about Dix, and then as we go through, we'll hand it off to those other folks. So the Dix Edge planning study has been going on, really kicking off with direction from council in summer of 2020. This is the study area here. So you can see Dix Park on the north side of Lake Wheeler. And the study area is looking at kind of this unshaded area, including Fuller Heights, Wheeler Crossing, Carolee Park and Carolee Mills, Carolina Pines neighborhoods down here, Walnut Terrace Park and Gateway Plaza, Gateway Park apartments. So there's been a lot of development activity around here. You all are all aware of that. We always have staff and private developers at these meetings talking with you about things that are going on. This is the timeline for the study. So here we are kind of in our phase later, or after our phase later workshops, we're heading into our final round of community meetings, which will take place on November 18th. That's the community preferences meeting that we're hosting. It'll be on Zoom, just like the rest of the meetings we've held for the study. And this will be basically a reporting out with everything that we've heard from the study so far, including information on some specific affordable housing projects that the city is likely going to engage in once the study is adopted. But main components of the study are, again, some of those affordable housing projects we'll look at, looking at the design of Lake Wheeler, which will begin or is beginning in earnest now. And Brian on the call will have more information about that. And then looking at zoning changes and just kind of future planning and future development for the Dix Edge area. So that's high level on Dix Edge study. I think what we're planning to do is present the final recommendations of the study to council, hopefully in February after the holiday season, and likely to have planning commission review and city council adoption take place before spring next year. So we are kind of coming to the end of that study, but we look forward to hearing from you and having your participation at our meeting later this month. And I'll hand it over to Kate Pierce with an update on Dix Park Plaza and Play. Kate?
Yeah, I think one thing I just wanted to kind of share big picture is there is so much going on in this area of Raleigh, like Jen and Bob mentioned, and all the city departments, we really are working together on it. So while I might be in parks and Matt is in planning and Fontaine is in transportation, there's a lot of interdepartmental coordination going on. And so that's one of the reasons kind of we're all here collectively and we're sharing a slideshow, but also just to reassure y'all that we might be in different departments, but we are working across departments to ensure that we all are coordinated on these projects, but also providing information to the community most efficiently as possible. So that's just a little background. With the Plaza and Play, most of y'all have probably seen Grayson Mon on a couple of these meetings. Grayson is out on leave for the moment, so I've taken over the project management here. But we are just finishing up 100% design development, which is really exciting. So the plans for the Plaza and Play are coming into focus, and we are about to enter into construction documentation, which is really taking the ideas, taking the designs, and producing a technical set of documents that can be constructed. So the other thing I will note, because I know Chris is on the call, is that we've been working really closely with Healing Transitions on their expansion. And we can talk a little bit about that if there are any questions. But the design itself is looking great. Sorry, if you want to go back one more. Sorry. The design itself is looking great. It really is a play space in a garden, a plaza in a garden. There's some really interesting stormwater features that are being designed, the rehabilitation of the house and many porches, the picnic grove. And so we're really excited about the current design and looking forward to moving it into the next phase of work. For everyone that is concerned, as Bob was mentioning at the top of the discussion, the dog park is currently here. We held a yappy hour a couple of months ago, and the dog park will move to another great grassy, large location. So all of our four-legged friends will have a place to run around safely. So for all of you that take your pets here, no worries. We are creating another large scale, grassy, shaded. We're actually adding some amenities like water to the future dog location, the dog park location site for any of those that might be concerned. So we're moving into construction documents. If you want to go to the next slide, and then pending funding, we will move into construction summer 2022, which is really exciting. So goal is to break ground summer 2022 and then be done by spring, summer of 2024. And so first big project to come out of Dix Park, and we're excited about where we are, and we're excited to deliver something amazing for the community to enjoy in a short amount of time. So that's where we are with Plaza and Play, and I look forward to answering any questions at the end.
Thanks, Kate. The next thing that we have on our agenda is the Lake Wheeler Streetscape.
Yep, thanks, Jen. For that, we've got Brian Rothroffy on the call and also Fontaine Burris. A couple of slides here to flip through. So Brian and Fontaine, if y'all want to take it away, I'll progress the slides as needed.
Sure, I'll start us off. So the Lake Wheeler Streetscape project is, and Matt, you can go to the next slide, is going to be from Maywood Ave to South Saunders Street, although there may extend a little bit on either side to tie into the both ends of the project, but those are the extents of the project. Next slide, Matt. The project's going to be implementing the Lake Wheeler Streetscape that came out of the Dick's Edge study. So this is really focused on adding pedestrian and bike amenities along the way, and also doing some traffic calming as well. So we're going to be keeping Lake Wheeler 2 lanes, but adding a center median and doing some traffic calming at the intersections, but having a raised and protected cycle track, large pedestrian sidewalk on the park side, and then a standard sidewalk on the residential side. The project's really aiming to hold the right of way as much as possible from the residential side and take any needed additional space from the park side. So we're going to be expanding a little bit into the park. This project is currently in the pre-design phase. So what we're really doing right now is looking at the intersection treatments and kind of how do we tie into all the projects that are happening along the corridor, so that some you're going to hear about after this, but how do we integrate what's happening with the Plaza in play? How do we integrate with the new driveway at the farmers market? How do we integrate with the work that Healing Transition is doing? And kind of looking at each intersection and seeing what are the needs of those projects in those intersections to make this a cohesive project. So we like to think of ourselves as the projects that's kind of like tying everything together. Matt, if you go to the next slide. This just gives you another idea of the types of elements that are going to be included in the project. You can go to the next. So timeline, as I mentioned, we're in the pre-design right now. We have a virtual open house that's open through November 10th. So this Thursday, we had a live Q&A last week about the intersection treatments that we're looking at. There is, for those who weren't able to attend it, there is a video that has the similar information. And we also have a survey that will be open through the 10th as well, where we'd love to hear y'all's feedback on the treatments that we're considering. There's also an RFQ out for the design of the project. Brian will be overseeing that. And we're hoping to have a design touch point again with the public in summer of 2022. Construction has not been determined yet. We still need to secure funding for the construction of the project. It's only funded through design, but there's a lot of motivation within the city to kind of get this project moving, given everything that's happening in the corridor. Matt, you can go to the next slide. So just kind of next steps. As I mentioned, the virtual house is open through November 10th. There'll be a council work session on the 9th. The Lake Wheeler RFQ is closing in the next week or two. I think it's this week. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
and then we're hoping, it's closing this week. And then we're going to start the selection process for the consultants and do a quick start design so that we can catch up with all the other projects that are happening, most particularly the Dick's Plaza in play. Brian, is there anything that you want to add that I missed?
Fontaine, you hit most of the key points. I say hopefully we'll start the actual design process early 2022. And, by the time we actually get the preliminary designs and all that incorporated from the intersection treatments as well as the Dix Edge custom streetscape, we're hoping to be back out to the public in or around mid 2022 for another design stage to show you what our 25-30% plans are looking like.
One of the major things that we're, one of the major challenges that we're facing with this project is that there are large Duke Energy transmission lines along the corridor, and looking at if we expand the road, do the power lines need to move, and if so, how and where? So that's something that we're going to be looking at right away with the quick start. And that is all I have. I will add in the link, add in the chat a link to the virtual open house for those who would like to access it.
Thanks, Fontaine and Brian, and Kate and Matt. Definitely can tell that you guys have been working closely together, and seeing the progress in the last 3 months on the streetscape is heartening. The next piece that we have on the agenda, I'm going to keep it moving. Drop any thoughts you guys have about these presentations into the chat. Welcome a robust chat as we go. The next presentation is actually on one of the projects that has already been approved. It was a plan development rezoning right before everything shut down for COVID for Park City South, the South Saunders project, which was by Merch Capital. And as I understand now, they're working with Kane Realty. So I believe that Drew Yates is here from Kane. I think I saw him. I know I saw Bonner on here.
Yep, I'm
you
here.
guys are ready. Oh, there you are, Drew. Hi.
Hey guys. So I'm Drew Yates, development manager with Kane Realty. Been working on Park City South over the really past kind of year and a half, right when kind of COVID hit and shut everything down. We kept chewing on this site. It's a great site. So let me share my screen real quick, give you a quick location overview, and then show some pretty pictures and kind of status of where we are, and then welcome any questions at the end. So Park City South is a 9-acre tract of land bound by South Saunders, Lake Wheeler, Rocky Branch Creek, and Dawson McDowell. So if you can see my cursor, it's right here. It is in total 9 acres, but only about 6 of which is developable because of that Rocky Branch Creek running through the northern boundary line. So our design really tries to take advantage of that as a kind of natural influence to the urban context that we're going to try to bring down to this tract of land. And have some pictures we can flip through so you can see the direction that we're heading. So real quick, again, kind of the location kind of influences of the design. Park City South kind of speaks for itself in our vision and direction for the design of the multi-phase development. So obviously huge influences by Dix Park and all the exciting infrastructure and investment there, and what that's going to be for the next 50 to 100 years. As we all know, our city's growing, and it's growing south. So bringing that urbanity of downtown to meet this edge of the park is a big goal, and making sure that we have both those contexts influence throughout our design. And then as we look south to continue that growth, looking forward, really in bringing the city further south. So quick updates. Jen hit some of this regarding the site itself. Again, it's a 9-acre tract of land, kind of triangular shaped, which creates its own challenges in bringing an urban grid and building layout. But 9 acres, 6 of which is developable. It went through a PD process and approved fall of 2019 by Merge Capital. We've been working with them really since we started working with them in spring of 2020. So again, right when COVID happened, and the site is zoned for 18 to 20 stories. and mixed use. So really, the zoning classification strives to bring a downtown context to this tract of land. If you read through it, it's really about the street frontage and bringing that urbanity, but also maintaining and bringing in the natural influences of the creek and Dix Park. So one of the big things that you'll see in the design as we flip through is that this site is going to connect to the greenway system. So my cursor right here, sorry, I should have oriented you before, but this is South Saunders. And this pathway jumping across South Saunders is going into Dix Park. So
That's Lake Wheeler.
Yeah, Lake Wheeler is going up kind of the page where my cursor is, South Saunders, and then Dawson McDowell over here. So we'll have a greenway coming out of Dix into the site, and then a bridge over the creek connecting to the existing greenway system, which is kind of on the Gateway apartment side of the creek. And then you can continue to go further south. So phase one, this is what we've been working on and working diligently with the city through the permitting process. Site permitting is approved and should have building permits towards the end of this month, hoping to break ground towards the end of the year, if not the very first of next year. This is a 7-story residential project with 18,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor. The retail is really designed to be an urban edge to this greenway that we're building out. So we're working with the city and creating not really what our typical greenway. It's a 20-foot multimodal path, would be made out of nice materials, pavers and concrete with a retail frontage on the edge. So hoping to bring a nice kind of urban context to this greenway, which you can see these bikers in this rendering kind of going back around the site that'll have retail frontage on it. And then you can continue down the greenway further south as mentioned. So where my cursor is heading this way, this would be South Saunders. As the plans develop and South Saunders grows, you know, the vision here is really for a main street, pedestrian friendly, very urban shop frontage on this street. So that's the master plan, is just bringing retail to the you know, to the property line and maxing this out to be kind of a downtown pedestrian street. And hopefully that you know, that brings retailers and all the amenities of the downtown neighborhood. Here's a quick site plan of phase one. Wanted to show you this so you could see where the retail nodes were. This is the same orientation we were just looking at. So my cursor right here would be South Saunders. Going off the page here would be going into Dix Park and up Lake Wheeler Road. And this would be the creek on the northern boundary, with the Greenway Trail coming along that northern boundary. And you can see the retail housing path. So we're envisioning these retailers being restaurants, kind of spilling out, having great outdoor seating, and you know, hopefully activating this to bring a nice urban edge to this greenway path that eventually, again, jumps across the creek onto the existing greenway system. And then you can see as you go down South Saunders, there's more retail on this edge. So as plans develop, we'll continue to see retail along that urban edge of South Saunders.
Drew, this is great. I'm going to give you 1 more minute.
Yeah, only got three slides to flip through. So this is just a pretty picture of that retail frontage on South Saunders. So continuing down South Saunders. This is a rendering a little bit further down the road just to show you a breezeway. We have these breezeways and overhead bridges that cut through the site in 2 or 3 different areas that allow for porosity from the greenway to South Saunders to create that path, that pedestrian path, you know, from the greenway to the streetscape. And here's a snapshot of the greenway on that northern boundary of the site, with the creek to the left and the bridge taking you across the creek and onto the existing greenway. So that's it. This is phase one, and look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Drew. I know it's tough to talk about these projects in 5 minutes, so I appreciate you guys' efforts.
Yep.
definitely stick around. I know people are going to have questions. The next thing we have on the agenda is the rezoning at Hamel and Lake Wheeler. You'll notice we're going north to south. So Hunter, you're up next.
Hey there, can everybody hear me? And yep, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
you're
we
good.
can hear you.
Okay, all right, good. Sorry, my name is Hunter Deepus. I work with Atlas Stark. We're a local developer in Raleigh. I have a lot of projects in suburbs in Wake County. And I don't have nearly as pretty a presentation as Drew did because we're not nearly as far along in our process as they are. So the only thing I really have to share here is the assemblage that we've put together. It is a collection of properties that are mostly warehouses and auto body shops between South Saunders and Lake Wheeler, right across the street from Park City South. And the Hamel Drive connecting kind of the two sections of parcels. So it's roughly a 7.5 acre assemblage. It was zoned R3. There are roughly 4 houses on Lake Wheeler Road that were R3, and the rest is industrial mixed use. We were approved for rezoning last month, about 3 weeks ago. For commercial mixed use, 20-story with urban limited frontage. And, you know, that's kind of where we're at right now. We have some conditions on that we've self-imposed on this assemblage. One of them being that we would limit the use on the southwest corner of the property, so across Hamel Drive at Lake Wheeler Road, to residential and overnight lodging and parking above ground floor retail. And then we have some various other conditions as to what the density can be. But we think this is a really good opportunity to help to work with the neighborhood, with the Dix Edge study folks. And we've been in conversation with them for several months now, trying to incorporate their ideas into what we're looking at. We don't really have any further site plans or anything. Like I said, we just got rezoning done 3 weeks ago. So right now we're just looking to kind of evaluate next steps, continue working with the local surrounding community and the park folks, and making sure that we can, and also Park City South, and make sure that we kind of do this redevelopment in a very responsible way and make sure that it ties in. We think there's a great opportunity to connect Hamel Drive into the park and share some parking so that people with overflow parking can park and walk across Lake Wheeler Road, and maybe Lake Wheeler Road won't be as dangerous a road as it is right now in the future. So we're really excited about this, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions at the end of everybody's presentation, but that's kind of what I've got. So thank you.
Before we turn it over, Hunter, do you guys have a design anticipated timeline, like site plan in the next 6 months, next year?
No, I think everybody, especially the developers here, can attest that getting a schedule firmed up in a couple of weeks is a very difficult thing to do. So our next steps are to start talking with designers, looking at what their schedules are, and start to put a timeline together for development. But that's not something that we've got available tonight, unfortunately.
No worries. Thanks for being transparent.
Sure.
Next up is an active rezoning. I think Molly Stewart is here to talk about the rezoning that's at the Baker Roofing property. That's how we all know it.
Okay, well, perfect. I'm Molly Stewart. I'm at Morningstar Law Group, and we have just filed this rezoning case, and I will get some slides up here for you. 1 moment. Okay, I think that worked. Okay. So in addition to going from north to south this evening, we're also going back in time. We are even less far along than Hunter was. And so we have just filed this rezoning request a couple of weeks ago. So there's the assemblage on your screen, mostly centered around Mercury Street. As Jen mentioned, this is the Baker Roofing site you're all familiar with. And to just show a little bit how it fits in around the park. It's an industrial area today. It's currently zoned industrial, no surprises there. The rezoning request, and I'll say a little bit about it just because this is all we have really on this project. There is no developer involved at this point. So at this point, you know, I'm representing the property owner, and really just sort of making this rezoning request. And the request is for commercial mixed use, 20 stories, urban limited frontage, and then with zoning conditions, of course. Urban limited frontage just means walkable and urban, like the other projects that you saw tonight. I'll talk a little bit about the zoning conditions. The first two are very standard kinds of things, prohibiting high impact uses and some extra concern for the types of lighting that would happen along the northern property line, because that's where the site backs up to that existing neighborhood. That third condition, I'll show you a little bit here in a second about why this is there. There's a concept that the city has in the development ordinance called a neighborhood transition, and that is something that happens where there's a mixed use district and it's up against a residential district, and so there are all kinds of restrictions on what you can do within about 100 feet of that property line. And so that would naturally apply along the northern property line of this site, except I'll show you why in a minute. We actually had to kind of go in and put that in as a zoning condition because there's a little bit of a wrinkle in that map. And then of course, we're promising a bike share station as well. And this is really deep in the weeds, I understand, for why we're here tonight, but we have this weirdness here of some street right of way that actually comes between the site down here and these properties to the north that are not part of the site. And so that's why we've gone ahead and just eliminated this issue where there's some question about whether there would be a neighborhood transition up against this right of way. And so we've just said we're applying it. And it went in our zoning conditions so that we, we're not going to rely on this little technicality here. And that's what a neighborhood transition does. If anyone has questions, we could go back to that. So like I said, we are just getting started, so we don't have a whole lot to share just yet, but I am happy to answer questions that you have.
Thanks, Molly. We appreciate you being here tonight, and hopefully some of the other conversations that you hear from community members will help inform you guys as you go forward. Since you're just getting started, you'll have the advantage.
Thank you.
Next up on the list is talking about something we're all curious about as we drive by, the state farmers market, their new entrance and some of the new things that they have going on. So I believe that Sim McIver from the state farmers market, who was on our Dix Edge community leader group, I believe he's online tonight.
Good evening.
Hi, Sam. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. I'll just briefly kind of talk about our project. The new entrance exit to the farmers market basically runs from the front of the farmers building to our large parking lot out to Maywood Avenue at Lake Willow Road. And it's going to be a great benefit to the market, and I think a great benefit to the neighborhood, the surrounding area too, because if you've ever been out to the farmers market on the weekend or on Lake Willow Road, we tend to back the traffic up quite a bit. So this project will help disperse the traffic going in and out of the market, and so it'll be a great thing for the market. I'll kind of give you a little bit of update of where we're at on the project. They just finished actually today installing all the storm drainage. That's 100% completed, and they are going to start milling this week and cutting for curb. And the project is due to be completed at the end of this month. And as long as the weather cooperates, I think we're going to get there. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thanks, Sam. One question before we go too far is there a sidewalk associated with that new drive as well?
There is a sidewalk, and it'll extend down from the electronic sign right there at Centennial and Lake Willer, and it'll actually run up the new drive. And then another project that we've already started is we'll have currently our current entrance exit, we do not have a sidewalk, a pedestrian sidewalk. That's going to be added, and it will run up to the farmers building. That's on a separate project, but that's something we're working on as well.
I'm sure everyone who drives past me pushing my stroller up that hill will be very happy that I'll have a sidewalk.
That's right.
Appreciate that. If you don't mind sticking on till we have questions at the end, I'm sure you're going to be popular.
Sure, be glad to.
The next thing on the list is a city project. So I'm not sure if Fontaine or Brian, you might be touching on this. There is a little bit of conversation that's been going around about Lake Wheeler and Centennial Parkway intersection potentially being redesigned by DOT. If you guys could just speak to this a little bit. I know it's not a full project yet, but just so folks know what's going on, so we're not surprised in a couple months.
Fontaine again. It is not currently a project. It will likely not be a project. I'll just start with that. Matt, if you're able to share the slide again, just so people can see what
sure.
is being referred to.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Hold on one second.
But this project, it was the history on it is that it came out of a study that NCDOT did on their own, and they were really looking at, it was called the Dix Access Study. The city didn't have much input on the study, so there's a lot of conversation about whether this realignment would be. And Matthew, this is the current alignment, and we'll just pull up what was being proposed by the access study. So NCDOT was looking at making the main movement for, if you're driving north on Lake Wheeler, to move to take you on to Centennial Parkway and realigning that intersection. It's part of the Dix Edge study. We took a look at this and we had our consultants do traffic analysis on this and largely decided that, or it came to a consensus with NCDOT that the traffic benefit was minimal and did not justify the cost of this project. And also we felt that it would make the pedestrian access to Dix Park and to downtown for bikes and peds even harder than it is now. So after looking at it, both the city and the NCDOT came to the conclusion that we were not going to be adopting this into the city's street plan. So there's no plan to move forward with this realignment. There is a project, however, and I don't have a slide for this, NCD is doing that is currently happening at the existing intersection that's going to be adding an additional left turn lane. So there will be 2 left turn lanes onto Centennial and 1 through lane to go down Lake Wheeler. So that will help with the capacity issue of cars coming off of Lake Wheeler wanting to turn onto Centennial, but will not be doing the full realignment.
Thanks for that update. I'm sure from what I've heard from folks that are on this call, there are many relieved people that the city was able to talk some sense into the DOT on that one. We'll hear more discussion in a few minutes. We've got just a couple more, and then I'm going to let you guys loose to talk about what you want to talk about. The last rezoning we're going to talk about is a recent rezoning at Kirkland Drive and Lake Wheeler with Bat Street. I believe we have a couple people from the project team on. I'm not sure who wants to speak on their behalf.
I can start.
Hi, Randy. Thanks.
Hi, so Randy Herman, I'm an attorney with the law firm of BA Folk. We're based in Cary, and we did the lead on this rezoning. So if I can share my screen real quick, I'll show you where this property is. This is a little bit south of the projects that we've been looking at, and specifically it's south of 40. So down at the north part of the slide, Lake Wheeler, and then Carolina Pines along the south part. So this is an assemblage of 5 parcels stretching from Lake Wheeler over to what's called Bat Street, which is a road that was never really opened. It's kind of graveled now, but I don't know that it's even passable on gravel. So this was rezoned for
for all three, so it's residences, 3 stories. The intent is for it to be mostly townhomes, but with the RX designation, we do have the ability to put in some small commercial uses in the buildings with townhomes. So like corner units, could be a coffee shop or something like that. And then the other aspect of the project is that Bat Street probably is going to be made into a pedestrian road. So it's not wide enough for a vehicle road, but it's probably going to be paved and opened up as a walking path. So that'll connect Carolina Pines up towards Kirkland and serve as one link in kind of the greater project to create walkability in this part of the city. So that was approved in August 23rd, and that was the so far that's the end of my project. So over to some of the other people from my side to talk about what else is going on with it now. If they want to.
Hey guys, Ram Lavani here, one of the owners of the site. We're still in discussions of what we want to do here. There's a couple family members involved, and we're discussing what the best use is for the city, for us, how involved we want to be. There's different ideas that Randy said. Townhouses could be a little bit of commercial, but we're in the process of hiring the right experts right now to come up with what the best yield would be. So that's all we got on this right now. We're still a couple months out of rezoning, trying to figure out which direction we want to go.
Well, thanks for being here tonight. We definitely appreciate transparency and check-ins to know even that things are in progress or undecided. Definitely helps the community. I'm seeing a couple questions pile up. Definitely want to see those continue. We have one more presentation from the Raleigh folks. Thank you guys for keeping with our north-south pattern and popping on and off. So just want to talk really briefly about the Carolina Pines Avenue improvements.
Hey, I'm Grady McCollum. I'm the project manager for Carolina Pines. I'll keep this kind of short. We're pretty much in the final stages of design, so there's not a lot of design changes that'll be made at this point. So we're currently in the real estate acquisition process. That's ongoing, along with especially trying to get some of those utility easements so we can move on to relocating that. And then we're expecting to send this out to bid probably in March, with a hopeful construction start of May of 22. And then it's about a 2-year project. So that's pretty much what I have for that one.
Thanks for that update. I remember something too, that the construction for that has like lots of phases. The construction timeline might start soon, but I think it continues for a bit of time with all the detours.
Yeah, it's a long process just because it's such a long stretch of street.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our presenters. That's the end of our power session of presentations, and you guys came in early, so good job. I know that we have several folks in the community that have heard some of these presentations and others that have not. So I'm going to open it up. If you'd like to ask questions, you can put them in the chat. We're happy to read them. There's a couple I'm going to start reading here in a minute. If you'd like to raise your hand so that you can ask your question out loud, that's allowed too. We're just going to try to stack through people as the questions come in. And sorry for my dog, he got all excited. through back to the top of our questions. It looks like we did have some discussion about those power lines at Dix Park and considering putting them underground or different alternatives. Kate, did you want to add any more detail about that? You're muted, love.
Sorry. What I put in the chat is pretty much where we are. Because these are transmission lines and not distribution lines, there's a lot of, Duke hasn't done this except for once in this region, and it was under the noose. So they aren't really keen to do, they aren't keen to bury transmission lines ever. And it would also be a project cost of $20+ million if it were even feasible. So that is not on the table currently.
We're going to be biking under the power lines. Thanks for that. One of the other questions, Anthony had asked if we could see all these plans in one map to see what's underway. And I believe Fontaine shared a map that starts to get at that. I'm wondering, Anthony, were you also thinking about, as site plans progress, if we could start putting some of those like building footprints on maps together too?
Yes, yeah, that was really what I was hoping for, because I mean, I feel like so much of what's going on is so very exciting, and just seeing the Dix Park plan and how that lays out, and sort of you get a real feel for what that's going to look like. Having some of these others incorporated into that, where you start to see what the landscape's going to be, would be really exciting if there's a way to do that. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. I mean, that's way beyond my scope, but I like seeing the pretty pictures. So somebody comes up with one, I think it'd be kind of useful to give folks a feel of the entire area, which I think tonight's been really useful for, because so often we hear about these projects just siloed. So you hear bits and pieces there, and really starting to get an idea of what that area is going to look like. It's very exciting.
Anyone want to respond to that? I can talk. You guys know I can talk.
Anthony, we'll take that back and see what we can pull together on the city side, and if we can stitch some of this stuff with what we have.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's there's obviously a lot going on.
Be sure to share it with your friends out here in the West.
Oh, for sure. You're always welcome, and we have your email, Jim. So be careful what you ask for.
I'll try.
Let's see. I'm looking down at the further questions. John asked about progress on the restoration of Rocky Branch. I assume you mean on the park side, but I'd also be interested to hear what the Merge Capital Group is thinking about for that as well. Did you want to add anything to your question, John?
Yes, I would like maybe Park City South can tell us how they plan to integrate this with what's going on in the park.
Kate, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start on the park side. So we hired a team of local consultants that started work in September to really get into the details of the feasibility of re-establishing the meander of the Rocky Branch and digging out landfill and working with North Carolina, working with Norfolk Southern and all of the other complexities. If this project has more complexines than any other project I could identify on the Dix Park site, but it's also the most exciting project, and one that, if y'all remember, in 2018 when we had a community meeting, was the project that got like spontaneous applause, which never happens in planning meetings, right? So we're excited about advancing this work.
It was a powerful moment.
It was a really amazing moment. So work is underway. We got 4 grants, 3 from the state and 1 from the Duke Energy Foundation to support this work. So we're excited about bringing that project to reality, and we're just figuring it out now. So more to come on the park side. And I don't know if the Park City South folks are still.
Drew, we're calling you out.
Yeah, I mean, so right now the plan is a cleanup of the creek located on site. And then once the bridge goes in, we'll certainly be taking restoration measures around that. But for the most part, it's really a cleanup and kind of reaction to what's happening upstream in the park. And so as future phases come online, we will be able to make any improvements as needed to that creek. So being downstream puts us where we are.
Thank you. That is a project of particular interest to me.
And then John, I think you had a second question about existing businesses. Were you thinking of anything in particular? Do you want to
Well,
expound?
you drive up down Lake Wheeler and most of what's there on the line of certainly get north of Mercury, a lot of residential. But if you take the side streets and go back in there are all kinds of little businesses operating back there. You know, as you know, are they going to be allowed to remain, or are they going to be relocated, or what's going to happen to them? Or is any thought given to this? Or have they already been gobbled up? And this applies to basically to everybody, not Park City South, but everybody else.
It definitely applies for maybe Hunter or Molly's project.
Yeah, more Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, John. Can you repeat that? I heard about half of it, but can you just kind of go back through that again so I can respond to it?
Oh no, you know, you get off of if you get back behind in there, Fuller Heights, or between there, Mercury Street, back in there over to behind actually up to the Harley Davidson place. There are all kinds of little businesses operating back there. And I'm just kind of curious of what thought has been given to what's going to happen to them.
Well, so when we acquired, so I can only speak for what we've done. So the majority of the businesses that are operating on the properties on either side of Hamel Drive that we've acquired and rezoned, when we acquired them, the leases were coming due, and we signed short-term leases, and we informed them of what our intentions were. And by and large, you know, we had buy-in from them and said, you know, so they're going to operate for the foreseeable future because we're still in the very early stages of planning. So, but the businesses that we're talking about that we can affect are, you know, some auto body shops on South Saunders Street, and there's the building supply warehouse off of Hamel. So, you know, to the rest of the businesses behind that going back into Fuller Heights, you know, I can't I can't tell you what may or may not happen with those. I can only tell you what we've talked with our tenants, and that's that we've been very cooperative with them in making sure that they have ample time to figure out what they're going to do and where they're going to go, and how they can continue their business. And we don't like to put people out of business. That's not what we would do. But so we do have a lot of lead time on our project in particular. So we're working hand in hand with those folks, and they've got leases in place where they can continue to operate for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I'm going to move it along to the next question I saw in the chat, unless other folks want to jump in. Let's see, that's a response. I put one of my own questions in there. I selfishly, this one's selfish because I want to be able to bike safely to the park. I've been bugging Kate about that for, I don't know, 3 years. And we were all really excited to see, I think, the streetscape design come into being for north of Centennial out of the Dix Edge study, and really curious about that coming further south and recognizing there's difficulties there and timelines and budgets, but curious what the current thinking about when or how that might occur.
Yeah, Jen, just to jump in here, this is Brian
Brian, go.
Thomas. Hey, I just want to, further emphasize what you're talking about there. I too am really excited about what I've seen for the Lake Wheeler streetscape, along the section of the park frontage there, along the sort of Dick's Edge area. But I too am curious, like what is that going to look like coming further south? And sort of what, like Anthony said, seeing all these pictures and seeing all this development, these projects coming together, it's exciting, and it's interesting to see how that there's going to be increased pressure on areas south of 40, increased traffic pressure as people seek to visit these areas to the north, Dick's Park, the developments that we're talking about, Park City South, I would even throw downtown south in there as well. People want to go to those places, but there's sort of this barrier of I-40, and how do we get to these destinations without becoming a more auto-dependent city than we already are? So I just would encourage the city staff folks here and the developers here to think about bike and pedestrian connections, not just within the development areas we've been looking at tonight, but also to where people live south of I-40. There's already, a lot of folks living in Pleasant Ridge, Carolina Pines area. And just for me personally, the retail space that might go into these developments, well, I already have plenty of places that I have to drive to. I'm not interested in any more retail that I have to drive to. So if I can get to your business by bike or walking, that's a differentiator for me, because how I experience your business, part of how I experience your business is how I get there. And if I can get there by bike or walking, I'm far more likely to patronize that business than I am if I have to get in the car. Because again, I don't need any more places to drive to. I've got more than anyone would ever need. So just wanted to add on to Jen's comments there.
I second that 100%.
Thanks, Brian. Oh, 1 second, Fontaine. We'll definitely want to hear from you guys. I think one thing that we'll say is just that one of the specific intentions tonight was to talk about what else might happen further, and really think about Lake Wheeler to Carolina Pines and the great improvements that are coming there, and then further even, to Tryon and more. Bob keeps us updated with the rezoning applications, and we know more are coming in at Tryon. That's even more people living south that will be drawn to all of these things. So to give context, and then Fontaine, I want to hear from you, and then I definitely want to hear some more about Doug's thoughts that he was sharing in the chat.
So currently there is nothing planned or funded right now south of Centennial. One of the largest challenges is that section of Lake Wheeler is owned and maintained by NCDOT. The section that the current project is on is owned by the city. So NCDOT's involvement adds some additional layers of complications for doing a project along that road. That being said, it's not impossible. Especially the city has been working really hard in the last few years to create a connected bike network. So with Carolina Pines going on, there is a level of importance of trying to add that connection of the southern portion to the northern portion. And that is something that we recognize. I'm going to hand it off to Matt because I know there's some recommendations that the Dick's Edge study has been looking at in terms of that connection.
Yeah, thanks. So to Brian and Jen's comments about access across 40, connecting those communities to the park and to the city and all the other amenities that brings, we have heard loud and clear that that's a priority for those communities. And so we're going to elevate further planning on making that connection a reality as a recommendation that's coming out of the Dick study. But to Fontaine's point, there's not design or money or funded to get that done in the next 5 years, but looking at that 5 to 10 year is probably the best we can kind of talk about right now, but absolutely elevating that connection as something that should be on city council's radar for future funding and bonds and just design projects. So that's a clear message that we've heard, and it's something that we'll elevate with the recommendations of the study.
That was the kindest way Matt could say I've been chewing his ear off about that for the entire Dix Edge study. Other thoughts on that line? I want to hear from Doug. Doug.
Well, actually, I have a thought at first on Matt's comments, because it's helpful to understand that DOT operates on the assumption that, and it's a correct one, that they are responsible to the entire state. So it sometimes seems difficult in dealing with them to get them to recognize your particular local problem. All that said, we've got two things really going for us. One is their tempo on looking at things that we locally see can be recognized by them. And we have the staff that knows how to talk to them to explain why this is something we're looking forward to. And so with those, that context, I think we should be very hopeful that something can happen, maybe even faster than we know, but don't dream too much. And that sort of leads to the observation that I wanted to make about strollways, because the more definite we make the edge of Dix Park along Lake Wheeler Road, the better position we'll be in to help them understand how it is valuable to help get the project done near the intersection. When I say near Lake Wheeler Road, I'm really talking about the area across from the that abuts the Plaza play area. But the whole road itself is susceptible of strollway treatment, which would be really amazing, because I've done some research in a class I've been taking with Chuck Flink, who's working on strollways. And we were talking about the Lenore Street, Dix Park Chavis strollway, and how that could be adapted to Lake Wheeler Road. And the result of that conversation was the discovery that although there are lots of different kinds of roads next to roads and pathways next to river walks and parks, and on parks by lakes, there really isn't a real good example yet of what a road and a strollway, a road with a strollway, might look like next to a park like Dix Park aspires to be. So that's the whole picture there in a nutshell. And I won't take any more time unless there's some questions, but I'd really like to have a conversation with just a handful or anybody else that's interested in this. And I'm sure that Chuck would be happy to participate to get some ideas of what this sort of, as I said to start, imagination that I had, what kind of form it might take, so that the engineers, and I had a nice conversation with Brian this morning, how something could be more definitive so they'd have something they could grasp. Because when in talking with him, I learned pretty quickly that I'm a long way from being a civil engineer. I mean, it's almost embarrassing that as much time as we spend on roads and things like that, we don't understand the complexities. And Kate mentioned complex projects. The Rocky Branch is one of them. But the opportunity along Lake Wheeler Road is also a very complicated one. So did I make any statement there except to see if I can get somebody to talk with me? That's really about all
You made
I want
lots
to
of
do at
good
this point.
statements, as always,
Pardon?
Doug. You made lots of good statements, as always, Doug. I definitely have appreciated the way that you continue to talk about the experience of getting to the park being park-like. And I think it's something that Brian was hinting at about the experience of getting to the retail stores being just important as getting to them. It's something we talked about with the art on the Carolina Pines project. I think it really resonates. Every community meeting I've been in, every different neighbor that I've seen talking to, like something about that park likeness follows. I want to pull in, I think this just came to me right now, the Bat Street connection that is part of the Kirkland project. And this, like I said, just came to me right now, but I kind of want to maybe poke at you guys a little bit as you decide, is like these kind of informal pedestrian and bike connections are really important. And I know that we were able to talk you guys into considering some retail options again on that project as you went through rezoning. I'm curious if any of these kind of thoughts about bikeways and connections from Carolina Pines to Lake Wheeler, if you guys think you might take anything back to the drawing board and think about providing some of those connections to people that visit your site.
I can speak on that a little bit. We do want something because obviously Bat Street is not a usable road. And we, said that it'd be only fire if needed. But it wouldn't be a road that someone would drive on. So we're thinking, put in a path along the perimeter or some way to connect it to Lake Wheeler. But then the problem is Lake Wheeler is a busy road. There's not a sidewalk, or I don't know the technical term for like one of those bridges that kind of go over like the on-ramp going on to 40, but I think one of those would be necessary as well. But how do you get a bike up one of those unless you're going to carry it? Or something that's a little more safer to cross the interstate, or the on-ramp and off-ramp for the interstate. But yes, we are looking to connect that somehow, and that's in our planning, and we'll have some open space, in our development as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing when I put you on the spot there. I think having that connection, and I know the community is really pushing for the city to help you make that connection with whatever fight we need to fight with DOT. I think we've talked about that pretty good. I know that's a hot topic for folks. I did see Connie had another question about a little further north. I think, oh yes, for Molly, specifically talking about the Mercury Street rezoning. There's a lot of cross streets with Prospect and things like that. Have you guys thought through how you might connect or not connect those?
Yeah, that's a great, oh, sorry, go ahead,
Connie.
I was just gonna say it's still on the city books that Prospect is going to, in the future, come across South Saunders, down by Coates, even though they're using some of the land, across some of the land that Baker is part of their parking lot, although it's still city, but connecting with Mercury at Mooring Street. Are y'all taking that into account in your planning?
Yeah, for sure. So that, as you say, it remains on the street plan. And we have not requested to change that in any way. And so, from a rezoning perspective, it doesn't affect us immediately. We're certainly aware of it and acknowledging it. You actually see in that, I talked about that neighborhood transition zoning condition.
Yes.
We talk about what happens if a street comes through there. I think that kind of changes everything. So, so we're certainly aware of it. It's really something that's going to affect us more when we get to a site plan stage. Like I said, there's not even a developer yet. So we're aware of it. We haven't really made a particular plan for it, but it's there. And like I said, it will remain there. We're not trying to change that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Do you think, I know you talked to folks on both sides of the street there in Carolee, do you think there's kind of a preference for keeping things connected?
Yes. If you mean the street coming across, yes.
Yes.
We have been trying to get the city to act on that for a long time, and are constantly making sure that it's still on the books and is still could, could happen. We're hoping will happen.
Thank you for those efforts, Connie. I know when you say a long time, you mean a long time.
I do mean a long
I think I've come to the end of where there were questions with question marks in the chat. There's a couple other comments. I'm going to open up the floor. If anyone wants to turn their mic on, maybe like actually raise your hand or Zoom raise your hand so we're not all talking at once. And Bob is still quiet, so I'm sure he has thoughts.
I'm doing fine. I was enjoying the conversation, and I had one comment for Kate Pierce, and that I don't have the vision sufficiently to see a 2-lane divided road down the main entrance of Plaza Play, accommodating the traffic and the buses and everything. And as long as Kate's comfortable with that, I will be, but please stay on top of that.
I think Kate just left 2 or 3 minutes ago, but I'm sure Fontaine and Brian have heard you, Bob.
I just see buses moving back and forth and going in front of Healy transitions. And we know there are limitations down at that entry. We're very apt to lose one of those around the railroad. But I have a little reservation about the 2-lane street divided, given, of course, that is the area where one of the developments we talked about tonight has the property during the narrowest strip. So if we end up having to enlarge the width of that, maybe it would be possible more than it looks like, because I know some of the most historic buildings in Dix Park are also located along that edge. Thank you.
Tane here, I can respond to some of that. That was something that the city thought through. However, Lake Wheeler was always designated as a 2-lane so that it's consistent with our street plan, but it's also looking at the city's desire to move away from car-centric design to a more multimodal design. And with the space available, there has to be a balance between the two. And given that, if we were to widen the lanes even further, that would be taking away the space available for bike and peds. Given the proximity to the park and the desire to have more bike and pedestrian access around this area, we wanted to make sure that there was safe and sufficient space for the pedestrians, rather than dedicating all of the space to cars.
Okay, but please use caution in using the comprehensive plan as an ultimate authority, because there are in fact some documented problems in that plan.
Well, I think it's, Bob, I think the point that you're making is that as we think through what Lake Wheeler is, we're definitely balancing traffic that might be induced by some of the projects that are coming online that we saw some great renderings of tonight, but then also the bike and pedestrian friendliness. And so I think if we can just continue to talk about that balance as the design for Lake Wheeler improvements continues, I think that will help.
Well,
folks.
part of the problem I come up with is that when you get south of Carolina Pines, the Lake Wheeler study, 2 of the 3 alternatives for that road that are in compliance with the comprehensive plan are noted in the study as being inadequate. So we have to make the reality come about somewhere. I don't know where.
Thanks. And Bob's referring to the 2013 corridor study that was done before folks knew all the things that were about to happen on Lake Wheeler Road. So we're glad to see some of those things be rethought. Other thoughts? I know there's still a couple people online.
Hey, Jen, this is Hunter Davis with Atlas Star. I just wanted to kind of just briefly address the biking accessibility has come up a bit and pedestrian access. And so just from my perspective, I wanted to kind of let you guys know what I've been informed of from the city, which is that the main thing is that the streetscape in one of the presentations kind of showed this, that the bike lanes are going to be moved off of it. This is still in process. I think that is probably going to move through and get approved, but the town wants to move the bike lanes out of the streets. They want to have a dedicated bike lane for bikers, and then the sidewalk that's dedicated for sidewalks. And one of the streetscapes that was shown in the presentation showed that today. So I think that's going to be paramount here, that, you know, if there's anywhere that needs it, it's going to be Lake Wheeler. And so I think pedestrian access for all the residential communities is going to be one of the highest importance that we look at, what the town looks at and what developers look at, because at the end of the day, we're trying to kind of make a mixed use development, or just improve a community, but it's something that it can be a walkable, bikeable type atmosphere. So I think that that's going to be a very big contention point that people harp on, and it's going to be paid attention to going forward. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
We definitely appreciate. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I really wish you could have done this about 2 years ago, because Tryon Road, Part C is where I live, and people don't realize it, but the new way of doing it and moving the bike lanes is actually, I believe, 4 feet narrower than the style we've been using, putting the bikes in the street. And we're still suffering under the old rules. If you can figure out how to make my sidewalk multi-lane, please do it.
Yeah, our part of town is definitely in the middle of that, because Tryon got approved without it, and then we fought hard to have Carolina Pines approved with a separated bike lane before it became the standard. Thanks, Brian, and other members of EPAC for that.
And it still has not become the standard yet. You know, I just, again, it's out there in the nether sphere, and so I think it will happen. And so the future developments, I can't speak to what's already happened, but I think the future developments will have to incorporate a lot of pedestrian access, including bike and walkways, and just, you know, what I spoke to earlier, wanting to have some kind of parking that's dedicated and a connection from Hamwell Drive over to Diggs Park, so people that are driving in, you know, have an opportunity that they don't have to get into the park necessarily. There's another ancillary parking spot. So that's kind of, you know, where we're headed with this.
Definitely appreciate that. And the spirit of tonight was really to think collaboratively about these things, because you know, one of the really obvious disconnections and gaps or opportunities is that the Carolina Pines Avenue bikeway comes out on the east side of Lake Wheeler. And then as Ram and the folks from Kirkland kind of pointed out, well, you can come out there, but then where do you go? And then the Dix Park bikeway is on the west side in the park. And so at someone's development or at the city's choice, there will be a place or multiple places where we can safely cross Lake Wheeler. And part of this collaborative conversation is to see if there's a good fit where maybe because of something Atlas Stark is doing, or something that the Baker Roofing property is doing, or the Kirkland property is doing, there's a good place for that to happen, and think collaboratively in that way.
Certainly. Yep. We're right there with you.
Excuse me. Definitely appreciate that. I see Doug has his hand up. Doug, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and then Brian, I'm going to give you 1 minute. And then John.
Mine will keep, let's go to Brian, and then another person asked about a place called Fourth Ward. It looks like we're closing on the end of time, but I really would only add, there are a lot of solutions. And I read recently that we can do anything we can imagine practically. And I think that's a good place to begin. And then with people like Mr. Edgerton to bring us back to reality, we should come up with something really terrific. Hope somebody will get in touch with me so we can expand this conversation. It's been great tonight.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to let Brian have his minute, and then I do want to get to Kia's question.
Yeah, just real quick. something that I think Ram Lavani said about building a bridge over an on-ramp at 40, but how would you get bikes over that, just kind of sparked in my head. I got to put in a plug for e-bikes here. So electric bikes. I don't know who all knows this. I know Jen knows this, but e-bike sales are increasing at 16 times the rate of normal bike sales right now. And Rad Power Bikes, which is the largest manufacturer or e-bike company in North America, they've received 2 different infusions of outside capital of $150 million. So a total of $300 million over the last 12 months from people you've heard of like Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, Morgan Stanley. So, I mean, they have the power to be real difference makers, and people with money are seeing that potential is real. So e-bikes are coming in greater numbers. And so building the infrastructure to support that would be really thinking ahead. So I'll just put that out there.
Definitely appreciate that. Kia, I don't know if you want to speak or I can read your question. I think she was asking if, go ahead, Kia.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, I just didn't know if anyone had heard about, I saw in like a tweet or something that there's a apartment building coming up off of South Saunders to be called Fourth Ward. And I just was curious if I couldn't find anything else on it. So just wondering what people might know about it.
Yeah.
Herbst is coming back. I don't know if that's
It's
it.
not. Hey, Kia, so I haven't heard about it. This is Matt in the city planning department. Hey, I haven't heard anything about it from work, but when you type that question in, I just Googled it really quickly, and a page came up on the Downtown Raleigh Alliance website that looks to show a plan with 10 townhomes going in at 726 South Saunders Street. And I'm just going to drop that in the chat. It's pretty, I mean, that's basically all the information right there, but it looks like based on the existing zoning there, I think they could just build townhouses, and it looks like they're just going to build 10 townhouses there, right there on Dorothea Drive and South Saunders Street.
So that's north of Western, right? If it's at Dorothea Drive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, north of Western on South Saunders Street, just south of the South Saunders Street and South Street intersection.
And for those that don't know, Dorothea Drive is the one with the really tall, skinny houses, the original ones that are hidden away.
It's Boylan Heights adjacent.
Got it. All right, cool. Thanks.
Great question. Thanks, Kia. I really appreciate everyone coming in tonight. There is one other comment, and I think it's actually a great place to kind of land. And I think I'm just going to read it. We've talked a lot about walkability, but there is also a big community desire to incorporate affordable housing into the developments that will retain the current diversity of the area. And asking any of the developments that are online tonight if they plan to contribute affordable housing units to Raleigh's overall need. I think that's a great way to kind of close out.
I would like to ask the question of the group, and that we haven't had a meeting quite like this in the last few years. It seems to me that maybe we should do something like this a couple of times a year. Bring in all the players from the different projects that are going up and down the road. And if you think we should, please let us know. I'm a firm believer that communication and answers are not nearly as frightening as questions. People fear the unknown more than they do finding out what's really going on. And that maybe we should do this a couple times a year. Please let us know.
Yeah, please do. I'm going to start with Matt on answering that affordable housing question.
Yeah, I just want to say, so yeah, I don't speak for any developers, but I will speak for the work that the city does to spend tax dollars and federal funding and use city properties to create subsidized affordable housing, reaching those lower incomes that are really hard to do without government money. And so we are bringing forward some sites for exactly that, city-owned properties in the Dix Edge study area as early implementation actions from the study to rezone city-owned property and get them prepared for disposition or public-private partnerships to create subsidized units reaching those deeper affordability marks. So we will be doing that.
And from some of our developers?
Well, Hunter Deep is here, Atlas Stark. I can say this, we have recognized that affordable housing has become, it was a problem years ago, and it's only become a compounding problem now. And as we redevelop certain areas, in our particular situation, we're looking at 4 houses that will be taken down, but they are affordable housing houses. And so it's something that we need to look at with the city. And I think that there could be a public-private partnership that needs to happen, because this is a very widespread problem. It's not just in Southwest Raleigh, it's in Wake Forest, it's in Wendell. Everybody's getting priced out of housing right now, whether it's a subdivision or whether it's a redevelopment. And I think it's our duty as a developer with public partnership to try and help figure that out. So we're right in there with you guys. We want to improve the communities that we go into. And so the last thing that we need to do is displace people and create a more inequitable housing situation. So we're right there with you.
Yeah, this is Drew Yates with Kane. I would echo what Hunter said. Really, the only thing I would add that at Park City South specifically, we're taking the approach to offer a huge variety of options. And so is that smaller units and larger units and different types of units. The challenge is on the capital side. And so trying to figure out a way to solve it as we attack it together in the private and public realm on the larger solution that is affecting us everywhere. So we are trying to creatively address it with design, but there is certainly more partnership we need with everyone involved in tackling this issue.
Drew, I know that y'all being at the top, you're really closest and neighbors to Gateway Park and to Heritage Park, just on the other side of the giant enormous bridge that was purposely built to separate people. So I'm curious how, if you could speak a little bit to that relationship with Gateway Park. And I know Kia asked about Heritage Park. I believe, and maybe someone from the city can correct me if I misspeak, but I believe that right now that the Housing Authority is looking at redeveloping Heritage Park with mixed income, but with the same number of units for the income levels that are currently there now. So there's a preservation, but I know that's a very, very openly and hot topic discussed right now. And Kia, I know this is near and dear to you because your family's been in this part of Raleigh for a long time. So appreciate any feedback you have, particularly about Gateway Park and the Jamaica Drive area and all of those things.
Well, I was just going to say thank you for acknowledging that. We talked briefly about it, but I really appreciate that you remembered. Yeah, and I was just wondering, so what you're speaking to, my family's from the Jamaica Drive area, and then when, I forget the name of those apartments were put up and the bridge was put up, a family home got bought and that area is no longer accessible to me or my family and loved ones. So I'm just hoping that, Heritage Park, that doesn't happen either. We used to cut through and I could play with like our neighbors and friends over there. And I would just hate to see people moved out of that area and not be able to come back I imagine it'll be a lot more costly after all of this development. So just curious about the possibilities that people can actually return. So.
Yeah, so this is Matt again with the City Planning Department. So I can't speak for the Raleigh Housing Authority. I've heard the same plans you've heard about Heritage Park. I know that they're looking to rezone and do a redevelopment project there. I do also know that I believe they intend to maintain ownership of the Raleigh Housing Authority of the properties in the long term. So they will have more housing at those affordable levels on site. That doesn't solve the issue that you raised about construction displacement for families that live there now. Happy to follow up with you though, and just connect and get you to the people who do have the best information on that. It's not me. I just didn't want you to sit you here quiet without anyone responding, but I can be happy to follow up with you and get you to the right people to get more clear answers that I just don't have.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you my info. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
And Drew, did you have anything to add about those connections? I know you guys are kind of at the triangle, the peak, where all those pieces are happening. So you're the closest neighbor, but certainly it's been good to hear. Molly Stewart, on behalf of the Baker Roofing site, she put into the chat that they don't have a developer yet, so they can't kind of comment on commitment to affordable housing, but it's something that they're interested and open to further discussion on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add regarding the Gateway Apartments. You know, we are building the greenway that connects onto that site where the existing greenway is. But you know,
And crossing the creek, is that still part of the site plan?
Yep, that's right. So definitely opening up the site and trying to provide amenities for everyone in the neighborhood, and yeah, that's where we are.
Thanks. I appreciate the comments tonight, and definitely appreciate the question. This is going to be the last call for questions so that we can let folks get on with their evening.